on how to harness AI innovation while protecting privacy rights. And exactly this is the very focus of this panel today. And it's a concern that has been heightened by recent developments in the technology, and the OECD recommendation in its revision earlier this year has evolved to reflect the evolving technological landscape, increased challenges raised by advanced AI systems, include privacy rights. So in our discussions today, we would like to navigate these three main aspects: the privacy challenges in the advanced AI systems, the evolving policy landscape for AI governance and its interrelation with privacy, and how to develop practical forward-looking solutions. I am joined for this discussion today by an exceptional panel of experts who bring diverse perspectives on AI governance, spanning from government, policy, technical community, academia, and regulators. And so I would like to to welcome today Juraj Korva, senior expert for digital regulation and governance from the Slovak Ministry of Informatization. Juraj is the chair of the CDAI working group on artificial intelligence governance and chair of the Global Partnership on AI. Have Clara Neppel, Senior Director at IEEE and co-chair of the OECD Expert Group on AI Data and Privacy, and Tiago Guimarães Moraes, Specialist on AI Governance and Data Protection at the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. We will also have Jimena Viveros joining us, I believe, a little later. She's a member of the UN Secretary General's high-level advisory body on AI. The way this panel will unfold will be to have our speakers bring their perspectives around this topic, and then we will also have time for a discussion with the audience, both here and then online. We are monitoring the chat, so we are closing. We will give voice to those who have questions online. So I will now start with Juraj, and there should be some slides on the screen. Okay, so Juraj, as the chair of the Working Party on AI Governance, played a key role in guiding the discussions that have led to the decisions of the recommendation on AI earlier this year. Could you walk us through motivations behind updating the OECD recommendation, and also tell us what were the primary concerns that were advanced AI systems and how these affect those?
One, two, three. Do you hear me, please? If you could change, please, my machine. I'm afraid it's not properly. Right, thanks. One, two, three. Oh, this is better now, I hope. Oh, not really. Is it better? One, two, three. But anyway, at least you hear me. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for providing again an opportunity for the international organizations to share the latest results of their work, including the OECD. We are happy to be here. This has been an outstanding year for us at the OECD, for us who work in the AI agenda. for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is the fact that we have created a so-called integrated partnership with the Global Partnership on AI. So the family of countries that cooperate and share knowledge together, and not only knowledge, but hopefully also solutions. The family is expanding, so now we are covering 44 different jurisdictions from all around the world. I was trying to calculate actually what proportion of the world population we cover in the Global Partnership on AI now, and it's 40% of the world population. So it's really a significant club. Now, notwithstanding the enlargement and possible further enlargement in 2025, we managed, as was already mentioned by Lucia, to update the first ever intergovernmental document on AI, which was adopted in 2019 by the OECD, the so-called OECD AI principles, which were then later incorporated into G20 AI principles, into the first international convention on AI at the Council of Europe, with participation of non-European countries, and to some extent also into the AI Act of the European Union, with which some of you may be familiar with. So there are some successes that we really can look back at, and I must say I'm proud for the whole group that we managed. Now, when it comes to the reasons why we had to update the OECD AI principles in 2024 was primarily for reasons of clarity, for reasons of reflecting on the latest technological development. And of course, we had to take account of many different interests that have been raised. As you know, the OECD works, and now also the Global Partnership on AI, after the integration, we all work on a consensus basis. So in order to be able to actually come to any modifications, any updates, we had to listen to basically hundreds of people, not only people acting on behalf of the governments, but also people involved in the expert groups. You will learn more from Clara on the go. So this was a very interesting exercise, but surprisingly enough, we managed to have this revision updated in May by the ministers in Paris. Now, one of the key milestones that I would like to convey to you on the basis of the work that we did is actually the definition of the artificial intelligence as such. So when we discuss impact of artificial intelligence on privacy or personal data, we really need to make sure that we discuss the same thing. In other words, what is actually the artificial intelligence when we talk about it? How we can recognize, or can we actually recognize and make a clear difference between AI and what we would call classical software systems. Now, you can judge our work. If you go to the OECD website, you will find an explanatory memorandum. Explanatory memorandum on the updated AI definition there. You will see how we actually arrived at the final solution. I recommend you to read this. And of course, there it is clear from the definition as such that any AI is highly dependent on data, on its quality, and of course, there is a clear breach to the privacy concerns. The last thing in relation to the AI definition I would like to mention is, of course, the fact that the definition is imperfect by definition. In other words, it's a work in progress. It will be reviewed again. And we also need to understand that making a clear line between software as we know it, or as we knew it, And the new elements that we call artificial intelligence is not necessarily as clear cut as we would wish. We should rather see it as a scale, because also, of course, the systems that we call AI, they are also dependent and interact with classical software as well. So it's very delicate. Now, with the privacy, of course, we need to realize that, as I mentioned, AI is hungry for data. It needs data to be actually built and to work properly. The thing is that, of course, any restrictions on the use of data can be detrimental for building of AI models. At the same time, to complete the triangle, it's not only about building of models and systems, but it's of course also about the way security environments access information about us and evaluate possible threats and risks. So any limitations there, of course, interact also with this field, which is not always discussed, but we need to be aware of this. So it's a delicate balance we need to draw between the protection of privacy on one hand and security needs and the needs of building up of AI models and systems on the other hand. There are three principles in our OECD AI principles, which are foundational also now for the whole global partnership on AI community. And these three principles, they explicitly mention the need to protect privacy. But of course, we recognize that even inside this broad family of countries and jurisdictions, the approaches to privacy vary. And they are, of course, also contingent on certain cultural notions, on political approaches. So many issues are in place there. With that, I would like to commend the work of the expert groups. We have multiple groups comprised of experts feeding into the work of our bodies at the Global Partnership on AI and at the OECD. So this is a treasure, a big asset that we can build upon. You are all welcomed to find out more about the way we work. And of course, the more we can engage with you in a meaningful way, the more knowledge and the more understanding we can build. And last but not least, I would like to also commend the work of the UN Advisory Board on AI, of which Jimena is a distinguished member for Mexico, where if you look at the UN Advisory Board report that was published in September, and if you look at the UN Digital Compact that was adopted in the New York City also in December, there you will find that basically when it comes to the first pillar of the UN Digital Compact, which is to create knowledge and understanding of the AI systems and the impacts on economy, society, etc., it is actually the OECD and the Global Partnership on AI that is relied on to feed into this first pillar of the UN Digital Compact, to provide the necessary knowledge, to share it with the global community. So besides the opportunity there at the OECD and Global Partnership on AI to engage with all of you, we can certainly then engage also at the global level together. With that, Lucia, thank you very much again for having me here today.
Thank you, Juraj, for providing this overview also of the most recent work of the OECD and what we have been engaged in with during this past very busy year. So now I would like to welcome and turn to Jimena. Jimena, you are an international lawyer and scholar, an advisor on AI and peace and security. You also lead a consultancy firm, Equilibrium AI, which is specialized on AI and peace and security. And as we heard, you served as a member of the United Nations Secretary General High-Level Advisory Board on AI. What we would like to hear from you is if you could unpack the social risks that you have identified with at the intersection of AI and privacy, and perhaps also comment on how proposed UN recommendations aim to create a more robust global framework for responsible AI deployment. Thank you.
Hello. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Yes? Okay, great. So it is great to be here. Sorry for the delay. So thank you for the introduction. And I would also like to start commending the work of the OECD and the new partnership with JPI, which I think is going to be very fruitful and going to be very good for advancing global governance and recommendations in this space. So I'm happy to be an expert in different of the working groups. So I look forward to contributing on that. So um, as Juraj was saying, Jurai was saying, um, AI is data. So we cannot have AI without data. And data comes with privacy issues. That's just a problem. So when we look at it from the perspective of peace and security at large, I mean, it brings a lot of problems because if we look at it even from like say the civilian domain, all of the data, we live in a society where everything we consume, it consumes back our data, whether we willingly accept it or but just because there's no other choice. So all of that data gathering by all of these platforms is then fed into systems, which could be civilian, which could be military, which could be of some security organizations, intelligence organizations, and we don't know what the purpose of it will be at the end. So we see this problem also in terms of all of the decision support systems, and for say autonomous weapons and other types of security implications that come along with the systems that work in this space. So so we have a lot of complications regarding that. What we also find is now the big hype with generative AI and all of the all of the breaches that come in that space, which we are all very familiar with, which is all just exacerbated by the different jurisdictions and approaches that are being used universally. So what we're witnessing is just a patchwork of initiatives. So that's why we should really strive towards global governance. And the work that we did at the advisory body of the Secretary General, leading to the Summit of the Future, and what was a part of the global digital compact and the pact for the future, it included this because we mentioned the security problems that comes with all of this data breaches, hacking, misuse of information, malicious or unintended uses, both in the civilian and the military domain, which affects the broader international stability frameworks. So we in the report highlighted that even beyond the implications of data and privacy security problems at the individual or at the community level, there's also very large scale impact on society. And we say in the report that it could even affect democratic institutions as a whole, in terms of, misinformation and the erroneous use of data, which is can also affect the geopolitical, the economy, and in different parts of the world and different regions, as we have seen already. Another problem that we have with data and with privacy in terms of security is the fact that we are now shifting the power dynamics of the world, in terms of the technological dependency. So it's not about who has the best systems, it's about who has the best data or who has more data. And that is something that has been accumulated even years before AI was booming like it is now. So we have a problem. We also have a problem in the lack of data. It's a risk in itself because misrepresentation, bias, all of these things are a clear problem in terms of data. So, and this also affects the privacy and of children. That's a big risk that we have identified, and everything regarding future generations. So now the question is what we can do about this. So first of all, we should really recognize data as a digital public good. This is something that it's also stated in the Global Digital Compact, and that has been quite at the high list of the agendas of the Secretary General. All of this common digital goods. So data is one of them. And what we could do is create a global AI data framework to protect all kinds of human rights that can be affected by the use of data, and obviously implicating privacy issues. Um, the GDC also offers some solutions, for example, awareness raising, capacity building, um, controlled cross-border data flows to foster a responsible, equitable, and interoperable framework to maximize the data benefits, um, while minimizing the risks to data security and privacy. Because as I said, the lack of data is also a risk in itself. So that's why it's so important the work that the OECD and JPI has been doing in this respect, because it's precisely that awareness raising and capacity building, and just bringing experts together to come up with solutions. Because the risks and the problems we have identified many times. The thing is how to do it, and how to come up with actionable recommendations, because this is vital. So the OECD recommendations that were revised now this year, with all of the human-centered AI issues, is vital, and I recommend for whoever hasn't read it that to read it, because it's a really important material that you can find there. And obviously cooperation and synergies across organizations, across jurisdictions, across communities, across everything is vital, because everything is complementary, and everything helps. So with that, I will close. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jimena, for this. This is really great work that you have been doing, and outlining also the key risks, and also some policy solutions already. So now I will move to Clara. As we heard from Uri, the OECD has also established an expert group looking at particularly the interrelations between AI data and privacy, and you are co-chairing that expert group. So what we would like to hear from you is what are the motivations that led to the establishment of this group, but also what methodological approach you're using to assess comprehensively privacy risks across the AI life cycle. And lastly, if you could please share with the audience the key findings that have emerged from the first report that was published with the support of the expert group.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimena. Can you hear me? I cannot hear myself, but good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here as well. And very pleased to share our experience with this cross-section, what you just mentioned, the collaboration between different communities. So as mentioned by both of my co-panelists before, we had privacy issues with AI even before generative AI, but this has been exacerbated with the vast collection of data across basically geographies, but also the possibility to then re-identify individuals, but also to identify, let's say, characteristics which were not even disclosed in the first place. I think I very much like to say that even very often you are surprised by the thing that the system knows about you, which can be accurate or not accurate. And if it's accurate, then you're kind of Orwellian space, and if it's not accurate, you're in a kind of a Kafka space. So luckily, we now know that at least generative AI is not always to be relied on. So I think that's maybe the positive effect of let's say the vast adoption of AI. So with the OECD that has been so active in AI governance, as mentioned by Juraj, there are already a lot of expert groups. So I'm part of the AI and climate expert group, as well as on the AI Futures expert group, and I'm co-chairing now this expert group on AI data governance and privacy. So you asked me about the motivation of why we created this. So I think that in the AI communities, you will find a lot of technologists, of course, also civil society and so on, which are looking to the different aspects of AI that start realizing and also establishing frameworks for governance for these different aspects. In the data privacy community, we already have an established frameworks. We have jurisdictions. We know how to enforce. We have also institutions, and of course methodologies. So what we saw in the AI space, that there is a lot of innovation that you just mentioned, also addressing privacy, but without knowing that there is already a lot of work going on in the other community and the other way around. So this was, I think, the main motivation to bring these two communities together and establish this working group. And indeed, the first deliverable of this working group is this report that was published in June. So one of the deliverables, outcomes, was really also to map the principles, the AI principles, to the privacy principles. And can you hear me? Yes. Okay. And as you can see here, it's a lot. I will just go into some which I think are specifically relevant. So principle one is really about inclusive growth, sustainable development, and well-being. And I think here it's really something which is very close to my heart, namely to weighing economic and social benefits of AI against risk to privacy, right? And really, this for me translates to have the right balance between the metrics of success. So not only concentrate on profit and performance, but really also on planet and people. And I think that has a lot to do with what we just heard before, and privacy being one of the important aspects here. The second is really about really respecting the rule of law, human rights, and democratic values. And here it's also interesting to learn from each other's terminology. So we both have established definition of what transparency means, but it's not, for instance, exactly the same. Justice for fairness. In the AI space, transparency relates more into how the system is set up, what kind of deliverables, so how understanding what the outcome is. In the privacy space, it's more about data collection and the intended use. So again, we needed to map the different definitions also so that we have the same language. And here I also see the human rights impact assessment. So I just had a session yesterday about Huderia, which was set up by the Council of Europe, the human rights impact assessment framework, that also needs to be harmonized with the data protection requirements. So I already talked about transparency. I think robust security is something that Jimena also alluded to. Here it's also coordinating on data security technologies, privacy and enhancing technologies being, for instance, one of the most important ones. And last but not least, it's about also accountability. Here, I think that's what we bring. Let's say I'm a technologist myself. What we bring to the data privacy community is to the understanding of the technical aspects. So specifically to the AI lifecycle, and where in the AI lifecycle privacy can plays an important role, also beyond data collection, because also at the inference space, phase and also other phases, privacy is important. So yes, the next one. This is basically the AI lifecycle, which is now the basis for further developing privacy related recommendations, but also others. This is, as you can see, it starts from planning and design. And what is new now, this was also revised, is that we have a new phase of retire and decommissioning. So it goes through collection and processing of data, building of models, testing, make it available for use and deployment, operation and monitoring. And you can see here, so basically what we want to do now as a next step of our working group is to go to every phase and see which recommendations, policy recommendations we have for these phases, especially when it comes to collection and processing of data. We have to see what does it mean, the limitation of AI when it comes to data collection. What does it mean if we are looking at large language model data scraping for the web? What are the privacy implications to that? Which are, of course, a lot. What is the role of synthetic data? A lot of large language models are now fed by synthetic data, which is also generated by models itself. So here, I think it's an important evolution that we also need to take into account. And of course, data quality, which, as was mentioned before, is important for accuracy, but also for discrimination and bias. And we go further, as you can see here, then what is going to be important also to see what does it mean to have a right to forget in the AI systems, what kind of oversight and oversight and accountability, as well as transparency measures we can put in place. We know now for the moment the data cards, but we should work towards having more than that for transparency. Well, I think that basically this is a work in progress. So as I said, we want to go into each of these phases and also share and welcoming also inputs. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara, for this overview. This is really instructive as well for those of us who are not privacy experts as you are. And so it's good to see how privacy affects each of the stages of the life cycle of an AI system. So I will now turn to Tiago, who is a specialist, and he has the perspective also of the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. And what I would like to ask you is, what are the most critical privacy challenges that you are observing in the context of advanced AI systems? And also on the practical side, how are data protection authorities developing practical approaches and solutions to protect privacy rights and while fostering innovation? I'll come with the mic.
Challenge with this mic, right? Okay. Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Lucy, for the invitation, for not only the invitation to be here, but also for the invitation for being part of this community of the group of experts on AI data and privacy, which I've been following since the beginning of the year. So basically, since its inauguration, right? And it has been amazing to be part of this community where we see the amazing work that has been done, which you just very accurately gave some highlights today. And I could start from here. I could say that many of these topics that has been just highlighted by Clara is part of the day-to-day critical thinking that regulators such as data protection authorities have been struggling on. And what I would like to share here, and starting from this challenges perspective, is that as privacy community start to understand what AI governance and AI regulation means when you start from the privacy data protection standing point is that you have to see how all these other values that now are coming, and that's why I put that circle there where we have like privacy, fairness, cybersecurity, transparency, human agency, and I know there are others, but these are some of the main values that we see in several frameworks. They come, and when you look at it in a more technical level, and you see the technical community is always thinking about trade-offs, which does make sense on a technical perspective because what you're trying as a technician is like to create parameters and try to see like how much you can achieve of any of these values. But at the same time, and as like anyone that works with policymaking, especially for legal a legal approach, human rights cannot be traded off. And that's here one of the main challenges. We are talking about trade-off of values in a technical level that they cannot mean undermining of human rights. So this for me is the biggest challenge, and not only for regulators from the privacy field, but in any other, but for sure, since data protection authorities have been working with managing the rights to privacy and data protection, this means that this is our day-to-day, looking how these measures are coming and working in a balancing of the human rights that we should be concerned about. And just to give an idea, and this is like the other image I'm sharing, the one in the middle, it just show this very uh, quite, I would say, a bit of a common sense that when we are talking about one of the main features of like de-identifying, which is the idea of anonymization, we have this anonymization, like privacy utility trade-off, right? And this, of course, is just very illustrative. I'm putting this arc because we shared a work before where we show, okay, what we might be looking here is trying to find this optimal point where you can still assure some level of privacy, but guaranteeing utility for the system, of course. But when we go to real use case, things are not so simple, especially when we are considering other values. So just to consider between privacy and fairness, for example, uh, fairness itself is already challenging for you to define on a technical level, and there are several parameters for that to try to guarantee some aspects of what fairness could mean in a technical level, like some ideas of group fairness and some parameters that try to translate what we should expect in the idea of statistical parity, for example. But when you add to that privacy issues and how to bring, for example, privacy techniques, privacy enhancing techniques here, it it gets even more challenging. And I'm just sharing here in the last part some of the work that we found of like this is not the NPD's work, but this work of like the technical community that has been work, the privacy community who has been working on that, how they were trying to find this adequate balance on how, for example, you embed differential privacy, which is a technique that like for the privacy community is well known, how you can use that and try to find this balance on still ensuring a good fairness level as well for this fairness parameters, for example. And what was particularly interesting this research, and that's why I'm sharing here, is that they found out that when you're looking for federated learning models, which are models that are trained at local level, and then you aggregate all the data for the main AI model, you can apply differential privacy in the local parameters to ensure first a better privacy protection, because if you just apply in the global level, you actually leave the local models unprotected from the privacy perspective. But another interesting thing is that you have to fine tune the level of noise that you're adding on the differential privacy, because if you go too far, you don't only lose accuracy, but you bring several issues of like Okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe now that going, can you listen to me? Oh, okay. Half of the room listen to me. Yes. Okay. Good. So, well, then let's turn them to the last slide so I can. Oh, it's me here. Oh, good. How do we go? So this is just also very generally speaking, like what DPA such as of our I don't know.
Another one here.
Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. Now. Okay. Yeah. I mean, every internet governance forum we had, every digital forum we should have tech stuff. So we see how challenging that can be in practice, right? So talking about I see. Okay, thanks for the tip. So well, the DPA's NPD has been doing that, but in several others. They have been working first on guidance, like so we can share best practice, good practice on some specific topics. Just recently, NPD has published a work on the idea of like how generative AI is bringing some challenge for privacy, like what Clara just said, that sometimes synthetic content is being created which it can infer some personal data, and it can infer in an accurate and in an inaccurate way. In both cases, there are consequences. So we try to tackle a bit of like what's part of this discussion, and we know some other peers have been doing the same. So we know like in France, for example, CNIL has been doing a very interesting work on that. And Singapore, the authority there is doing a sandbox on the paths for generative AI, privacy enhanced technologies for generative AI. So we see that like the works can, are doing, we are doing both in the theoretical level with guidance, but also more hands-on, like sandboxes. Uh, us, as the Brazilian Data Protection Authority, we are starting a pilot sandbox next year on algorithmic transparency. So we can discuss this concept and what does this mean in the context of a data protection framework, like ours in this case, in the Brazilian GPD. And besides that, we have been also, all the DPAs, I could say, have been asking themselves what are the roles now that we have AI regulations coming up, and we have to think, should we be the main central AI authority, or even if that's not the case, because sometimes it can be very political level discussion, what will be our role and how we can ensure that our role is still guaranteed and protected, even like if we now in a more complex environment where we have to work together with other regulators that are also dealing with data governance related issues. So I think I'll stop from here, but thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Tiago. It works? Okay. So I have some follow-up questions, but I would like this to be also a conversation with you. So yeah, with Mike, maybe I give you this.
Thank you very much. You can hear okay? Very much for these very interesting interventions. The issue, it's a really great example.
Maybe this one.
But make sure you hold it.
Hold it like this, like
Okay.
the upper part.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay? Okay, thank you. This is a really nice case study of what's happening across technologies, of this issue of convergence. I'm with UNICEF. We're looking at, I've led work on AI and the high-level advisory board and think of how AI impacts children, and we're looking at how neurotechnology impacts children. And AI and neurotechnology have converged. So these issues, privacy is the issue, but if you even look at the technologies, whose responsibility is it to set the governance rules? So I was really interested to hear about this, the working group. And my question, Clara, is kind of what's the end goal of this interesting and useful exercise? Because it sounds like there are some governance recommendations within the AI space, within the privacy space. You're looking at kind of mapping them, but what's the output? Is it a new merge set, or is it kind of an update on both sides, or do we update the kind of the, you know, like the principles from time to time, which is necessary? UNICEF also has recommendations for AI in children, and we've been reflecting. They came out 2021. The world has changed. It's time to refresh those. I mean, the principles stay, but how you apply them is. So yes, that's where do we go from here? Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up the issue of children. Actually, I also wanted to bring it because it's I think a big issue, not only on privacy, but also on mental health of our future generations. So I think that we have different issues how we can tackle this. So just to give you an example of now specifically age-appropriate design, because that is something which I think we need to take into account in the AI design system. And we are working, for instance, so IEEE with the Five Rights Foundation to set up, I hope, a universal standard of how to collect children's data. Okay, if you can hear me. So I think that is one of the practical examples of what we can do for the moment on a voluntary basis, but in certain jurisdictions it is already like I think in the UK, where it is obligatory. So also I think this is what we want to do in the working group, is first of all understand what are the issues, where do we already have solutions that we can leverage from each other, and to identify the gaps. And some of them would be very certainly policy recommendations, but we also very clearly want to target the developers, for instance, when it comes to scraping data, so that they understand what the policy implications are, what the legal implications are, because a lot of them don't have that. So it's both sides.
Is there any other question? Yes.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm from Nanjing Youth Development Service Center, and like in my study field, there's this technology called blockchain, specifically for data. By storing data in like multiple different sectors, any slight changes to the data can be tracked and detected. But like this very much protected transparency of data, but this technique in and of itself is at the center of debate on privacy. So like you said, it's like a trade-off system. So I want to know how you guys think of this technology and how we can actually find that balance.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So actually, does it work? Okay. So yeah, thanks for the question, because it's actually very important, and then I can try to give an idea of, like, as a DPA, I share the experience of the Brazilian Data Protection Authority but also from what we heard of other peers. Some similar approaches happen. Like we do look usually most data protection authorities, DPAs, as we call, we have units that work with monitoring technology progress. I am part of one of these units there in Brazil. We know other institutions like in the UK and France, they have something similar. And what's interesting about these innovation technology monitoring units is that they have to look not only to AI, but several other technologies like blockchain. So blockchain, for example, is a topic that we also follow. We have like part of our team is working on looking on specific privacy related issues and with the blockchain technologies. For example, one very big challenge in when we're talking about privacy and blockchain is because usually when you register the information in the blockchain, it stays in the blockchain. And we do have a right for elimination of personal data. So how can we do that, right? If personal data is embedded in the blockchain. So what I can say for you is that this is part of the discussion that we're having. It's very challenging when we decide to provide a solution because we have to be very sure what we are proposing in a policy level. So far as I know, this is a topic that the privacy regulators, the privacy community has been discussing, but I am not aware of a very strong argument of how it should work. And I do believe that what we need to come to this answer is to be better engaged with the technical community that's working on that. And we've seen this working happening in the AI governance level. Like I can say this work of the OECD as a big example. And I think we should have more of the same in the blockchain discussion because eventually we will actually be seeing these two emerging technologies getting together more and more as time passes by. So thanks for bringing blockchain to the discussion.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I just briefly intervene. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Do you hear me? Yeah, okay. On the topic of converging technologies, just like blockchain and other, it is very important actually to realize that when we talk about privacy and AI, we cannot really discuss only this. You really need to have a whole picture of the whole digital stack. In other words, we can hardly talk about governance of privacy in AI without actually fully understanding the implications of digital platforms for privacy and the way platforms are being driven by AI or enabling AI via collection of data about the users, right? The same applies to Internet of Things, because those data taken from the sensors from the Internet of Things, they will feed into the AI systems. The same applies to digital finance, possibly now also to some new efforts in the field of biology, which can be even more delicate when it comes to privacy and our biological predispositions and design. So there, I think it's a very good example. Also, of course, blockchain as well. But this point that was raised really leads us to the necessity to have a full picture of how these different digital spheres interact and how they are integrated into the most sophisticated services and products available on the market, because the most successful ones on the market, they manage to integrate all these environments together. And of course, then the implications for privacy are even more imminent.
All right, so just to add on the conversation, I think if we're talking about human rights, and I think we should start from there, the right to privacy stems from the right to identity, right? So, which also is very linked with the right to be forgotten, right? So, what we're witnessing now is we're trying to create or foster the protection of our personal digital identity or signature or print. And that is a new type of concept that we haven't had thought about before. So when this information, our personal information, especially when it comes to biometrics, genomics, neuro technologies that are happening, and all types of personal identifiable information, when it's locked into something, such as blockchain or any other technology or any other environment, it's complicated, and especially because sometimes the capturing of this information isn't necessarily consensual or well informed. And this is a problem that has been happening for a long time. But the situation now is, what is the that is being given to this information, whether it's locked, whether it's just being captured now, or whatever is happening. So because, again, coming back to the implications on peace and security, I mean, we can think of in law enforcement, predictive policing. We can think of border control. We can think, again, with biometrics, which is pretty dangerous. And then even in governmental services, even access to healthcare, access to loans, access to financial services, housing, whatever, like all of these things are being predetermined by the data that is stored and how they represent or misrepresent a person. So I think it's very important to remember that at the basis of privacy, it's identity, and that is the one most precious things that we have, and that's why we should all strive to protect it.
Thank you so much, all the speakers. We have 2 questions here and 1 online. Would you mind? Okay, I think I'll take the one online first, so that we have, but we have only 2 minutes to go. So please, quick reaction from the speakers. How do we deal with privacy by design within the AI changing state? One quick reaction so that we can hear another question from the floor.
Well, it's very welcome, this discussion, because when we started discussing by design process, like privacy by design, we're asking how we go hands-on from now, right? Okay, we are building amazing policy frameworks, but how these frameworks translate to concrete considerations. And what I can say that has been proven to be a nice experience from the part of the DPAs is using the sandboxes, because all the privacy sandboxes that have been organized, like from CNIL, from the Norwegian DPA, the ICO, Brazil now, Singapore, we see that like we usually bring some discussion that in the end of the day, what we are trying to test with that particular given technology, like AI, for example, but it can also be blockchain technologies or just a data sharing practice, is come up in the end with like good practice and way of like how this actually being is a practical experimentation on privacy by design. So I would stop here because I know we don't have more time.
I would just like to add 1 sentence here. I think some of the issues are so important that it should be enforced. Like coming back to the children, I think that the collection of children data should be really regulated, and because that has enormous implications for them and for our society. And for others, I think that the context will be important. Again, what was mentioned before, privacy is dependent on the context. Some things need to be enforced by regulation. Sometimes we need to take privacy into account for a specific use, and without trade-offs, hopefully, or having the optimal trade-off. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are at time, and 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so please.
Thank you very much, Martina Legal-Malakova from Slovakia. I have the question for Hemina. How you see the lawyers today could protect the human rights that today for the new emerging technologies, we don't have often the laws, but we have only principles. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a problem indeed. I mean, these principles, these guidelines are very useful as stepping stones, but they're not binding. And then we come to the problem of enforceability. So what we need is the adoption of the standards protocols, guidelines, principles, however you want to call them or frame them, and get them adopted at the national level and push for them to be actually consolidated into global governance. Because if we don't have a global framework that's global, like internationally, because all of this is transboundary. So if, like, again, coming back to what I said at the beginning, we just have like this patchwork of initiatives, even if they're regional, that's not enough. We need something that's global so that everyone is protected in the same way, because our information is everywhere. So we just need to convert principle into action, an action that is enforceable, that it can be monitored, that can be verified, and that there's proper oversight mechanisms. So that's why I was mentioning before, like a centralized authority that controls all of this and conducts all of this oversight at the international level would be a good approach. But in the meantime, all we can do, and it's very valuable work, is these principles, which are ethical values, whatever, but stemming always from human rights, which already are existing. And the problem now that we're facing is the revamping of even those basic human rights that have been there for the past 70 years. But with the excuse of AI, everyone is kind of like opening up the box again and rethinking whether they are applicable. They're always applicable, but we just need to find the way to integrate it into the reality that we're living in. So the solution is get governments to regularize it in a harmonized way and then make it a global governance regime. Thank you.
Okay, the very, very last question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Hassan Ataibi. I'm from Mawadda Association for Family Stability at Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. What I have is actually not a question, it's an input, if you don't mind. So the rapid advancement of technology had led to increased collection and processing of personal data, often without sufficient safeguards to protect privacy. Innovation in AI heavily relies on vast amounts of data, heightening the risk of privacy violation and misuse of data in ways that can harm individuals. There is a growing concern that current legislation lags behind technological progress, creating gaps that allow the exploitation of personal information without explicit consent or comprehensive understanding by individuals. We call to strengthen legal frameworks, update and enhance legislation to ensure effective privacy protection in the age of AI, ensure transparency and accountability, require companies and organizations to clearly disclose how data is collected and used, while implementing the robust accountability mechanism for violations. Engage civil society to include civil society organization and user in the development of AI and privacy related policies and regulations. We recommended the following: develop impact assessment tools, create and utilize tools to assess the impact of AI technologies on privacy before their implementation, raise awareness and provide training, organize training program for developers and policymakers to emphasize the importance of privacy and strategies to protect it during the design and deployment of AI system. And finally, encourage exceptional initiatives such as His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Global Child Protection in Cyberspace (CBC) initiatives, which aims to strengthen collective action, unify international efforts, and raise global awareness among decision makers about the growing threats to children in cyberspace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think we couldn't have a better way to end this passionate debate. I think we could have go on and on discussing with you. It's a topic that deserves a lot of the policy attention, as we are seeing, and this is really at the core of the discussions that we are undertaking in the international AI governance and privacy sphere. So with that, I would really like to thank the distinguished speakers here, Yurai, Jimena, Clara, Tiago, for their excellent contributions, but as well as the audience for participating so vividly in this discussion with us. Thank you.